Welcome to this installment of the story behind the stats, where we put some of the snazzy visuals that are circulating around the web in context. Today, we're going to take a look at mobile phone sales going back the last 30 years. Now, it's important to note that AT&T essentially developed the technology behind mobile phones. But it wasn't until 1973 when Motorola placed the first phone call and sold the first mobile phone. Thus, not a surprise that in 1993, Motorola was #1 in terms of volume of sales. There was a company in Finland that started off in pulp mill and rubber, but also cable telephony technology that was targeting the youth market and gave Motorola a run for its money. Nokia even finally in 1998 usurped the #1 spot away from Motorola, and as you would expect, in Finland, they had their competitors over in Sweden, Ericsson, that was also trying to chase Motorola, but to no avail. There were other companies, Alcatel, Panasonic, Samsung, who were in the space, Siemens as well. Now, in the early 2000s, post the dot-com bubble bursting, there was a lot of promise about the future of mobile phone technology, but it was still very, very rudimentary. And Nokia and Motorola were still basically the #1 and #2 players in the space. Motorola eventually also targeted the youth market with the Razr and became very popular again, stealing some market share away from Nokia. The main inflection point that happened in 2005 was actually Google buying Android and basically releasing the open source operating system out in the wild and encouraging others to use it. Samsung, which had always been quite a strong player, but never in the 1 or 2 spot, actually embraced Android and really started to invest in the operating system, although it reaped the benefits in years to come. 2007 was another revolutionary period because in January of that year, Steve Jobs stood before developers and said that we are going to reinvent the phone. After 2.5 years of development and $150 million of investment, by June of that year, the iPhone was released. Initially, a lot of analysts thought that this was simply a product for the rich and wealthy, and you could tell with fairly low volume in its first year, it very well could have been. In 2009 was another important year because Samsung released the Galaxy, which was really the first phone in that family that went on to make a dent. In 2011, Microsoft had realized that they were too little, too late to the party. They made a partnership with Nokia to try to catch up. But the main thing that happens in 2011 is, if you notice, Apple surpasses BlackBerry. BlackBerry's parent Research in Motion had a dominant position amongst government employees in the corporate market, but even though it had a very affluent user base, it was never widely embraced by consumers. You see now that the Samsung's embrace of the Android OS gives us this distinct advantage, and they started, frankly, to inspire themselves heavily from Apple's interface, where they just built this dominant perch. Microsoft realized that it was never going to catch up for lost time. They first partnered with Nokia in 2011. They then bought Nokia outright in 2013. But by then, it was too little, too late. Microsoft realized that they would not really be able to compete. By the second half of the 2010s, it was very clear Samsung was going to be the top dog because they had lower priced options for everybody around the world. They would be #1. Apple, despite their reluctance to have a lower priced phone, remained very strong in the #2 spot, and Huawei had also embraced Android and basically emerged in the top 3 spot, which is why President Trump's decision to punish Huawei has now put a dark cloud on top of its future, and we shall see if Huawei will be able to maintain on its 3rd place position going into the 2020s, or if that creates an opening for one of the other companies to emerge in the top 3 spot. Hope you enjoyed this installment of Story Behind the Stats. Let us know if there's any other visual graphics that caught your attention and we can put it into context.